might sign on. I think that means we're good. All right. Okay, well, it's lovely to be here in person and virtually. I really appreciate the invite. It's nice people to get back into room and talk to people. I did talk to people quite a lot about cognitive rehabilitation using RehaCom, using HeadApp over the pandemic for reasons that might become obvious later on. So thank you for the introduction. So my name is Carolyn. I work with Anatomical Concepts. We're based in Scotland, in Glasgow, but we work across the UK and obviously in Ireland sometimes as well. I'm an old Dublin native, having lived here for 10 years, so any excuse to come back is very welcome. Invite me anytime you like. So Anatomical Concepts, we've been around since 1996. Our aim is to improve the lives of people following catastrophic injury or illness by providing different types of products and services. Now this had started initially with pressure relief orthosis. That's how we began, importing those from the US. But increasingly, we work with different kinds of technology from around the globe, either in clinics or in people's homes or in spinal injury hospitals, to help improve their rehabilitation progress, to help adapt more to life, improve their health and well-being over the course of their life. I've been asked to talk about something which I'm fairly passionate about, which is cognitive rehabilitation with computers. Computer-based cognitive rehab was kind of been a tricky subject for some reason. I only started working with it around about 8 years ago. And to me, it seems like a no-brainer that if you could rehearse and train using a computer, which I felt like everybody had in front of them, why wouldn't we be doing it? But there was a real disconnect between what we thought we could gain from that, what we thought we might be giving or taking away from therapists. So we've had a little bit of time now to get used to the idea here, and we're finally seeing people adopting more of this technology. Oh, one again. So a mild TBI, we know there is a link between the severity of injury and the likely impairment, but that can actually be a little bit fuzzy. And increasingly what we see is people being told they have a mild TBI is 6 months, 1 year, 10 years down the line that you're actually seeing some cognitive impairment. So it's really just to remind yourselves while we're looking at all this software, it's not just that immediacy of impact, it's down the line, what can we be looking out for? How can we be supporting clients in their journey at all stages? This is a rather challenging statistic I have for you here. This study was done in 2004, and this 80% of the patients had unmet cognition needs after TBI, after 1 year. Even though that was 2004, and we're talking nearly 10 years ago now, that statistic is actually unlikely to have changed that dramatically. So we know that we're already feeling some of our patients in the care that we give them. And this is why we're increasingly turning towards things we can do at home or out in the community to support them. You as staff, you as trainers, you as clinicians are all really time poor. You've got lots of large outcomes that you have to try and meet. So we need to try and give you the best tools to help your clients. So putting the pieces back together, what we're looking at doing is recovering what has been lost where we can. We want to try and improve their cognitive function wherever possible. And of course, most importantly, that has to impact our everyday functioning. So when we're seeing improvements on a screen or on a computer, we want to have that translate into real life, into everyday activity. But what's our strategy for that? Usually, we seem to consider one route predominantly more than another. There's nothing particularly wrong with that, but let's see what we can do if we cross some of these paths, if we merge the lanes, could potentially end up onto some sort of motorway for rehabilitation if we start to think a little bit out of the box. So compensation. I know I'm just speaking to the converted here. You all know this. Compensation, we kind of implying that recovery is going to be limited, that there's an endpoint to what we can achieve. We're looking at external aids. We're looking at adaptations. We're trying to make life a little bit easier, looking for strategies, particularly with the cognitive side, so that we can compensate for things that have been lost. And although I said it can be limited, it doesn't mean it's negative. It's an incredibly important strategy, but what we want to try to do is merge it in with a little bit of restitution. So we used to think that neuroplasticity was impossible, maybe limited again. Look, it's not a big silver bullet either. There are going to be limits to what we can achieve restitutionally, but why not try? Why not see what we can achieve by having a little bit of faith that the body is way cleverer than we can ever imagine, and that it's proving to us time and time again that there are limits to our knowledge. So that, for me, the best course of action would be to mix those restitution and compensatory strategies to try and find the best outcome for the patient. I said it already, it isn't a silver bullet. Using something like RehaCom or HEAD-AP as part of your cognitive strategy is an aid, but it's not like you're magically going to turn and go, oh my goodness, it's just repaired all my neurons and connectivities are firing all over the place. We're never going to say that. You have to think of it as a tool. And when I stand in this room, in this facility, which is really well kitted out, and I can see the amount of tools and apparatus from blocks to big robots, I know that you're already practicing that here, that you're looking at people as an individual, looking at what their need is when they come in the door and saying, okay, which tools can I use to best improve their outcome? And RehaCom and HEAD-AP on all these softwares are exactly the same. It's about finding something that will work for your client, something that will reinforce, enhance, it might even complement some of the other work that you're doing. Of course, if they can use it at home, then that's obviously even better. Also remembering that it's not for everyone. So if you've got clients who just don't engage with it or don't enjoy with it or just find it unhelpful, don't feel like you have to use it. These are your Swiss Army knife of tools. You can pick and choose it as you desire it, as their rehabilitation progresses. So our approach. First of all, when we're approaching cognitive rehab, we'd look to encourage functions that are still in good condition. Why would you do that? You're going to build confidence. You make people feel empowered, that they've still got things that they can feel actively involved in, that they feel strong in, and it also makes them more readily available to help deal with things which they have deficits in. So if you think about doing anything yourself, when you lack a little bit of confidence, we like to do something that makes us feel good because it puts us in a state of readiness. It makes us feel like we can achieve. So again, although we don't want to necessarily be training these things all of the time, because obviously if they're doing quite well, that wouldn't be so useful, we do want to give them that sense of warmth, that sense of strength. Then we'd aim to train specific functions. So this idea of a minimum effective dose, again, in this room here, I'm sure it's all about repetition. We know that consistency is key to making actual change towards recovery. So this minimum effective dose is a little tricky to achieve sometimes. But again, that's why using computer software and having the ability to do things at home, we can vastly increase the amount of repetition that we can do. And then increasing level of difficulty with care. So again, we want them to feel challenged. We want them to be engaged, but we don't want them to be frustrated. So being able to adjust that difficulty and doing it with real conversation with the client, real observation with the client is going to be very important. So software itself, there's a lot of software. I mean, there's pretty much software for everything. There's apps for everything now. A number of years ago, when I was speaking about RehaCom in particular, people were like, oh yeah, but yeah, brain training, I've got that. I've got a little switch and my mom does it on a Sunday evening. It's really not the same. There are massive fundamental differences between brain training games and things which are fun and interesting to do, and deficit specific software that is working on an actual need. So this software that we work with has a strong evidence base. It covers all the stages of rehab. It's specific to the deficit. It's easy to adapt. We have screenings available. We make sure we can supervise clients. And of course, we need to be able to measure progress. So the evidence base. I really like this little animation because RehaCom has been around for nearly 30 years now. And that's one heck of an evidence base that they have been growing and growing over that time. And I just wanted to illustrate that it's never one thing. Outside of our own spaces and our own silos, sometimes there's other people researching and adding on and making this better. So like I said before, this is scientifically based and it's clinically tested. RehaCom itself is actually used in 95% of German rehab facilities. It's used across the UK, across Europe, the US, and increasingly in Asia as well. Between 2001 and 2020, we've got 17 studies specifically using RehaCom with TBI. So we have a growing evidence base in this area, but I have a lovely manuscript full of studies that I will give to you at the end. You can have a look and read at your leisure. And of course, they're still ongoing. So we speak to clients and rehab facilities. At the moment, I've got a couple working and they're just even looking at doing case studies. Taken down to real life was one of the challenges with their research is going, oh, I've just seen it do this thing and I'm not researching that. How do I write it down? So they have anecdotal support that working with RehaCom is helping a client with impulse control, which is carrying over to their physio sessions. It's anecdotal, but it's lovely. And if we could capture that in different ways, then of course that can make a difference to our clients as well. All the software supports you through all stages of rehab. So like a life belt, this will help someone who can't swim, but it also helps the person who can, but's just a bit tired. We need something that we can use all the way through their journey because your needs change. This software is going to support you at different points, adapt to your ability, and maybe point out ways or areas which you hadn't necessarily picked up as well. So that's the reason we're also very deficit specific. There's no point really on working on concentration if you haven't dealt with alertness. There's no point in working on memory if you can't concentrate. And don't even try to do a shopping list or arrange your day if you haven't worked on that working memory. And again, it's in the areas, particularly with working memory and attention, that RehaCom has been shown to do incredibly well in our case studies and research. Oh, I love this guy. Has to be able to auto-adapt. No tortoises were harmed in the making of this slide. It needs to auto-adapt or at least be very easy and quick for the clinician to adapt on the fly. So if you're working on a reasonably easy module and the client is going on, you can see they're getting maybe a bit bored or they're wondering why the heck you're making you do this because it's clearly so easy for them. You want that to be challenging a lot more quickly. So you can adjust the parameters in every module so that it moves a little bit faster or becomes a little bit more difficult depending on how the client performs. But it's not just looking at your right or wrong answers, you're looking at your working speed, you're looking at any errors made. The software can even pick up visual deficits if you're working on a nice big screen. So you're able to see a lot more than just good, bad, right, wrong. The feedback that they get is also important. So are we pausing when we get a wrong answer? Are they able to explain and understand why that answer was wrong? Or for you as clinicians, can you give them a strategy to help them achieve the right answer? We can be a bit cheeky with the auto adaptation as well. So if you know someone's kind of fairly confident and is whizzing along and not really paying attention, which is not the point of using software, the whole point is you want to be sitting at attention, then you can decrease the number of wrong answers or the difficulty for it to pull back again. If we're asking the software to pull back after a certain number of wrong answers, then we're encouraging the client to go, okay, all right, harder than I thought. Need to take a moment, need to focus on what I'm doing. What did you tell me to try again? Okay. So there's lots of cheeky little ways that we can make it more challenging in the room or not. So both software, RehaCom and HeadUp have screening modules. And they're not designed to be neuropsychological assessment. you have plenty of expertise in the room that will do that for you already. What it should do is be able to support any of those assessments and then signpost you to modules for training that would best suit that client. So if you want, well, gosh, we've got nearly 30 modules in RehaCom and 20 something and 27, I think now in Head Up. That can be a little overwhelming if you're going in with a blank page. So where the heck do I start? So it's nice having that little bit of guidance. Screening modules also allow you to assess the progress of the client. So you'll be able to see, are they progressing through modules? Again, not just in terms of, are we increasing the level of difficulty, but also in specific areas, like are they now responding to oral feedback? Are we getting less incorrect answers? Are they typing feedback to us some days? And the screenings are not the same as the training modules. And this is quite important because we don't want there to be just a learned effect of doing the training exercise. So the screening is just different enough that we can see if there's an actual change. Again, through some of the studies that I can share with you, you'll see different ways in which people have measured the efficacy. Again, you might not want to be hooking people up to MRIs and stuff just to acknowledge what's going on. But in the Head Up, for example, there is a screening which is just on activities of daily life, which is where we want to see the majority of our difference. That's where it's going to make the impact to the client. And being able to discuss with them that change. Even between sessions, again, if they're feeling a little bit low, if they're feeling that they are not progressing, you've got something you can actually show them to say, well, this is the change. This is how much faster you're working. This is how many more correct answers you're getting. These are all the new modules we've discovered. So I think it's really well worth doing. And then the final thing in terms of the software specificity is home training. So we did quite a bit of this during lockdown. How on earth were we meant to work with our clients during lockdown without being face-to-face when we struggled to sit in a room with somebody? For a lot of our slightly more higher functioning clients, RehaCom in particular was a really good tool for us. So we are able to set a prescription for a client. So as the clinician, you can sit with your calendar ahead and block in the exact modules that you would like them to do over a week or 2 weeks. You can adjust the parameters so that it starts from the same level or has that increase or decrease of difficulty automatically. You can set it for, in the acute phase, it's around about 15 minutes a day, we recommend. When you're in the community, higher executive functioning, we're looking at 3 times a week, about 45-minute sessions, which is a lot, so you can break it up. But you can also write notes back and forth to the client. So they open the software on their computer and it tells them you have this, this, and this to do today. Lovely. Can't get into anything else. Can't go play the ones that they like. You're going to have to do the work that you've asked them to. And then you can also write a message to them to come up before training, which is really nice because you want to be able to, again, reinforce things that you're doing in person, remind them of things to help them perform better. So for example, if you're looking at memory for faces module, and you're going to present to them a number of faces, and I'll actually show you this module later, perhaps remind them about what strategy it was you used when you're in the room with them. So for example, making mnemonics or matching names to faces or making funny rhymes, whatever it is that worked well for that client, give them a little note, jog their memory, and they're more likely to perform well than just sitting at a blank screen. They've also got the ability to write back to you. So if the cat jumped on the table or the doorbell went or they really, really had to go to the bathroom all of a sudden and you see the performance dip off or something strange going on, at least you get that feedback and you know, okay, it's just a bad day. And in that, there's a lovely bar for self-evaluation. So before and after the training, you've just got a little bar with a sad face and a happy face. How do you feel today? And how do you think you're going to do in this training today, before and after? I mean, if we thought about our day and you get up in the morning, if someone asks you, how do you feel today? How's your day going to go? It's going to be crap. It's going to be great. So you're able to match as well their mood their environment, and be able to make not so much judgments, but you've got some more information to be able to understand more how that client is feeling and how much that might affect their training. Sometimes it could work really well for you. How often do we have really bad days and then you go out for a walk and it's just like the best walk ever? You go to your own training and you really smash it, fine. But there are those days that you get up and you just want to go back to bed. So we want to be able to acknowledge that, because we also might be able to influence that environment. If it's putting training at a particular time of day when they've just had a hard physio session and they've had lunch and suddenly they just really want to go to sleep, probably not the best time to do cognitive training. So we can then see that and move the session. So there's lots of different ways that we can engage people and bring it back into real life without having to feel like we're stuck on a screen. So 2 different software I keep mentioning, RehaCom and HeadApp. They do everything that I mentioned. There's actually 7 screening modules and 2 wellbeing modules in HeadApp. I just had a type fart there, sorry. Both are very deficit specific, both auto adapt. They both allow for remote supervision, patient feedback, both in the moment and retrospectively is there. And you can get those lovely progress reports, and you can even chuck your own logos on and print them out and hand them to people who are maybe questioning your judgment, but there you go. Both software were developed in Germany. They came from the same team, works off the same evidence. Like, okay, Grant, what is the actual difference then? Well, RehaCom is station-based. So we're working on a PC only. Ideally, we'd work on an actual PC station, although it can run on like a Windows Surface tablet. If you're using one of them, then we would recommend putting it onto a larger screen, just so that you get a nice big station for the client to work with. This is particularly true during the acute phase. We want to give them the best possible chance to train. So giving them somewhere which is a dedicated, clean, clear, undisruptive workspace is really nice. Think how often we can like sit on our phone with the telly on, or I'll do my Wordle and then you end up on your emails. So it's the same thing. We need to give them the opportunity to train in a nice, quiet environment. We can license RehaCom in different ways. So it can be to a dedicated machine or on a server, or with internet hours, which are kind of like pay as you go. And we also have an adaptive panel. So if you have someone with reduced mobility, then there's still an interface that they can use, which isn't a fiddly keyboard. And it does operate with touchscreen as well. Not all modules can work with everything, but they've done the best they can to make it as accessible to everyone as possible. And then HeadApp. So HeadApp is slightly different. It runs in a web browser. So you can pick it up on any computer or tablet. They do have an app for both Apple and Android, which is lovely. It makes it a little bit more accessible for people to do at home if they don't have a PC available. The licensing is done per therapist. So if you are working with a group of clients, the license comes to you and you can work with an unlimited number of people in supervision. It doesn't have any external aids, so you would be restricted to whatever setup the client has. For that reason, often we say that this is more suitable as people are released out into the community, or where you've got that higher level executive functioning where they just want more input and would be fine working on a smaller station. Again, most even tablets now, you can hook them up to a large TV, so it does give you some adaptability. Or if you're a clinician going out into houses or out into clinics yourself, that you can, knowing you can knock it into a screen and be able to do some work is useful as well. Okay, that's the waffle, right? You're like, oh yeah, okay, show me how it works. I'm going to show you a couple modules from each. The first one I'll show you is attention and concentration. And this is from the HeadApp, but it's really almost identical in terms of function in RehaCom. So I'll give you a little overview of this screen. All we need to do here is find the image on the right-hand side in the center. This is us. This is level 1. You'll see along the top that there's a stars. In RehaCom, there's a little bar along the side. And this is just showing you how many correct answers you need to get in order to progress up to the next level. So I've obviously said it reasonably challenging for this one. I want to be really, really sure that there's no guesswork going on here before we move up to the next level. Yes, yeah, level 1. I think that's, I did actually make a video. Well, hecky heck. This is at level 32. Oh, heck, it's going mental, sorry. I did do this one, and I think it was the bottom left, but I can't remember if that's true, and I also cannot tell you why. I appreciate that it's this pretty small screen for like everybody. Guys online, everybody in the room has now leaned closer to try and figure this out. So you can see this is a great deal of challenge, working from having one quite simple image that you have to select from 3 very different images. It'll go up in number to 6 and 9. Then we'll come back down into a slightly more complex image, 6 and 9, all the way up to level 32 here, where we have incredibly detailed images. And if you wanted to be super mean, then you can add a time limit. So again, that's something that you might want to use in much, much earlier stages. Again, just trying to get people to pick up on their strategies faster. For us, well, yeah. And this is nice to be able to show clients as well. This is hard. And it's hard from level 1 up to 32. It's always hard. It's always challenging. So it gives them an idea of that pathway, but also an expectation that they don't have to be a wizard to achieve that. I'll let some folks here have a play on this later and see how you do. Next I'd like to show you is a little bit of vigilance. So this is from the RehaCom software. Hopefully all right. So we've got 3 objects in the bottom right here. I want to memorize those objects, and then all you need to do is when one that doesn't fit reaches under this little buzzer, you select to identify that it's the odd one out. Yeah, thankfully got that one right. If I get any wrong, it was purely for science. So just for demonstration purposes. So again, that's a nice module to start with to keep your attention. Also working a bit on your memory, keeping you alert. I made a few changes. We're still on the same level, but I adjusted some of the parameters a little bit. So it's going to be a bit faster, and I reduced the number of wrong objects or objects with errors that there are here. So you have to have more sustained attention because there's less for you to pick out. Yeah? So you can see the difference between the 2 with those slight changes. A little bit faster. So again, it's a nice way to add a bit of challenge, is just making it that little touch faster. Again, with people with mobility issues, can be a challenge using the panel or the keyboard. So you might have to work up to that. But again, is there things that you can be crossing over with your physios? Help working on those specific actions, or are there things that we can be looking at in terms of cueing, which would help that client? So there's no reason why this has to stay in a computer room. I would definitely encourage thinking about how it connects with other work that we do. There, I'd like to show you another RehaCom module. And this is definitely one of my favorites, even though it's kind of time consuming to set up if you want to do it like really top. This is our memory for faces. At level 3 here, you're asked to memorize that single face. And then you'll search along the faces at the bottom to find the correct one. You can have them all facing front. And then as you get harder, obviously changing profiles does add a level of difficulty to that. If we find the right one, then we'll add a second face for you to remember. We've got 2 this time. And again, while you're sitting with your client, you can be coaching them through this. What are you trying to remember? What are the features you're picking out? Are there things that you might want to encourage them to do if they're struggling? Do they need to note something down? If that's what they're doing at home, if that's what you're wanting them to remember to do at home, why not rehearse it in a safe environment and just make sure that they even understand that instruction? So again, this is a ways we can support rather than just trying to make the software do all of the fancy work. And then we get up to level 7. You see, I've got names now. I could do this in my daily life. So I've already forgotten her name. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, Mr. Kendall, remember Miss Riverton? I think I've seen this quite a few times and I still don't remember her name. So now we're looking for the named person in this list. As this gets harder, you can add in job titles. That can be useful if you're working with people, even once they've gone home, but especially in units. So you can have all of your own staff images in here and then put their job titles in so that you can start to have that ability to go, okay, I recognize. Now I recognize and I know that's my physio, or I know that's my OT. You can also get up to adding phone numbers. Thankfully, we don't really have to remember phone numbers ever now, thanks to phones. However, there may be some cases that actually having 1 or 2 really key numbers would be useful for that client. So if they are going home, can you add family members in? Can you give them those details? And it's something they work up to. I can't imagine what it would be like to sit and not recognize a face coming towards me. So I think this is why this one holds quite strong in my heart, is that we can give something so quickly to let that client rehearse in a safe place, in a safe way where there's no repercussion, there's no worry. It's just the computer. Nobody cares about the computer's feelings. And thankfully, computers don't have any yet. not these ones anyway. This is a lovely module with head up. Actually, I should confess a little. So a little while ago, I got COVID, which sucked because I managed to get a good variant. And it floored me for just about a month. And when I came back, my 2nd or 3rd day back in the office, I was doing some training with head up. And it was this module that made me go, I think I need to go home. Because I was terrible. And not in a, oh, this is a really hard level and it's hard kind of way, but in a, I'm struggling, I'm actually missing things, I'm completely checking out, I don't have the concentration, I didn't see that sign, I am not getting back in the car. Now, if I am in some ways lucky to have had this, to have recognized just quite how bad that was. And it's also a tool that you can use with clients as well. If you're able to demonstrate their readiness to participate in something else. So for me, this was a key, okay, no, we can't get in a car because I won't see the light and hear the radio at the same time. I just won't, and I can't risk it. So those are the things that we're translating back to the client as well, saying, okay, I know you feel like you might be ready to do this. Why don't we set ourselves a goal? Why don't we work towards this challenge? Because it lets them prepare and it lets them understand they have a foundation and a knowledge of how they are able to interact with things like this. So this is level 1 and it wasn't too bad at level 1. So you're basically just asked to look at the scene. You've had a little while now to look at the scene, got extra time because I'm so nice. And after this is shown for an amount of time that you can set, it will ask you a number of questions. Did any vehicles drive by? No. Is there a sun in the sky? I don't know. Now you can add the I don't know. I like having an I don't know because I don't want to see a guess. But some people prefer not to have that in there at all. It's really, again, that's up to you. So you see, it's asking quite a lot from a short scene. And again, you've got a bit of review and you can repeat the scene then at the bottom. And that can, again, be useful for clients who are like adamant that they may have seen or not seen something. It's a little bit more movement in this little one. With a nice sign there, sorry. I may have cut this one off before the questions, but no, I didn't. I don't have a strategy for remembering these, but I know some people in the room will. I know that some people are sitting there going, I can ace all this because I would teach my client to scan a scene this way, to remember something this way, to use a relative word, or to map it on their body. I don't have those skills, but you do. And that's where things like this are really useful, because again, you're practicing in a safe environment with no negative consequences, apart from maybe losing 5 coins. I'll show you a slightly harder level. So again, a little bit more going on here. There's a nice quote of the day that scrolls up at the top, which is always by somebody curious. There is sound as well that you can have in this. And it's amazing the things that you think you pick up. I am now obsessed with looking in the windows of all the buildings because of one question one time. It's like, were they in the downstairs right-hand window of the insurance store? And I'm like, oh my God, must have been. Again, if anyone wants to play with this later on, I'd be very happy to take you through it. In the RehaCom software, this is slightly different. So divided attention, there's 2, 1 and 2. One is train driving, and the second one is car driving. And you'll be in the cockpit of either the train or in the car, and it will present you with your speed signs that you have to get to or reduce to. When indicators go, you'll have lots of distracting objects and road signs that you have to be aware of. In the higher levels, you can add in radio. So you have to indicate using a button if you hear a particular traffic update for a specific road, whilst probably there's a police car coming up behind you and you get your little lights in your rear view mirror. So there's layers and layers again that add on. I like to use these a little bit in conjunction with each other. So again, it's really nice to have that divided attention with the car, because it's that relatable, okay, this is when I do actually have to perform all these tasks simultaneously. But again, something like this to start with can be a nice way to lead into that. I just thought I'd show an actual user experience or a clinic experience, because I think it's all very well me talking about how good I think this software is and how obviously it benefits me. But I'll just put my sound up.
I've been working in brain injury for 10 years, and that's included acute services and rehab. When we think about rehabilitation, we're talking about lots of things in a team effort. But from the psychology part, our whole focus is on cognitive assessments and finding the nuances of where the person's strengths and weaknesses lie, so we can build up the strengths and improve those further, and build up the weaknesses or find alternatives if necessary. And I looked for software that might be able to assist with this type of training. And the software that kept coming up was RehaCom. Then trialled it with some residents who were here at Hunters Moor and had really great feedback. So the residents were saying, this is really interactive, you know, we're really enjoying it. We can see how well we're doing because it produces graphs every time we get, every time we get better. And it really motivates us. And we've had really good success with this. In particular, one gentleman had an out of hospital cardiac arrest, massive hypoxic head injury, had issues with problem solving, planning, timekeeping, short-term memory. There was a little bit of issue with new learning, attention problems, and vision problems. The software, when we did the assessments, picked all this up. And what it does is it formulates a package. So it's all individualized for each resident. And we worked with this gentleman for 2 to 3 times a day for 3 months or so. And at the end, when we repeated the screening software, everything had moved from red, which was obviously where there was impairments, through to green, which showed that there'd been some efficiency and some learning and some progress in those areas. The search field was better. So instead of just stopping and saying, I can't find this item, there was a whole sweep of the area that needed to be searched and the item being located. Planning, timing, problem solving, all improved massively to the point where this resident was able to be discharged home. And this is the key. We have to keep moving forward, striving with the times, and somebody has to believe in something and invest in it. And that's what Hunters Moor and the Active Care Group have done, is they've invested in technology that they know is going to produce wonderful outcomes for their patients.
So yes, that's a Hunters Moor, part of the Active Care Group, have a number of facilities across the UK, and we're working with quite a few of them now. And I quite enjoyed my last visit to Hunters Moor because they do group sessions now. So they actually got a number of laptops and they bring people together a couple times a day to sit and work on their station. And they pop headphones on, and they'll have usually 2 clinicians that will work between them, because they've got a variety of needs and abilities within that group as well. So the people who need more attention can get a little bit more, but the people who don't are free to work and push themselves as much as they like. And the nice thing about having them on the laptops as well, like Jyoti was saying, they're slightly more higher functioning ones, the ones that are really driving to get home, is that they can have a station set up in a quiet corner somewhere, and they can log in with their own details to do a prescription, or, you know, in the evenings when there's not so much on their schedule, they can go in and practice themselves. And people have enjoyed that empowerment of having a bit of control over their own schedule and their own ability to train. So they're a really nice example, and I'm looking forward to see some case studies come out. So they're talking between their different facilities now. So, what are you guys doing with that here? And Jyoti in particular is very keen on a collaborative approach. So she works very closely with her OTs and her physios as well, and they all know what everyone else is doing, and they're all driving towards outcomes for their patients. So I sound like a little fangirl, like it's no place is perfect, and everywhere has its challenges and things that we have to hit, but there's a really nice sense of collaborative working, and that idea of their toolkit is pretty vast at this point, and they're really working towards those individual outcomes. So I get towards wrapping up, because I know this is like a super whistle stop tour of 2 different softwares. Effectiveness studies, if you are here, I can provide you with a link. If you're at home, you can scan this QR code, and that will get you straight to a PDF of the effectiveness studies that are available for RehaCom. It will have both broad-based cognitive software and also RehaCom specific. So you're able to see that across the spectrum. And if there's anything specific that you're interested in terms of research or case studies, please just come and ask, because if I don't know, I'll know somebody. I'm always happy to put you in touch with other clinicians as well, because we're a wonderful bunch. And then if you, for some reason, want to talk to me again, you can scan this code and you'll get all my details. I'd be very happy to give you a trial of RehaCom or the Head app with my colleague Ferry. We can do a lot, again, still online, so happy to give you a little tour virtually. But if you do want me to come and speak to a group, then I'm also always very happy to do so. And I guess that is it. I hope you can see the value, the potential benefit of working with cognitive rehabilitation software. I hope that you can see it as being a part of your toolkit. Certainly seen a lot of amazing collaborative work happening over this week, which is really fantastic to see, and be delighted to be a part of that conversation a lot more. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oops, yeah, well, you have to Thank you very much, Carolyn. We will make the recording of the presentation available later tonight or tomorrow morning, together with all the others. And we will continue to work with Carolyn in the future, I'm sure. Now we will take a 10-minute break, unless there are some questions. So we have a few minutes for questions, maybe, if there is one. Or even from the people online.
Did you find that people's clinicians were slow to uptake to the computer platforms?
Yes. I think a lot, not always through a fault of their own. There is a reluctance, I think, feeling that you would be disengaged if you're just working with a computer. And I that's why I like to reinforce the point that it's your tool and it is something that you're working with the client on. The other side, though, is IT departments are great. So IT departments can often cause challenges when you're trying to install anything, run anything. Of course, there's always concerns over GDPR, and they create sort of unnecessary barriers because they're all dealt with here. Usually the bigger issues come with just having enough computers with updated OS systems, and having people that stick around in facilities long enough. I'm sure it's the same here. Your brain drain is huge in a lot of these services. So sometimes you can set something up in 1 month and then 4 months later, there's an entire new department of staff in. And that's really challenging. It's not difficult to learn, but it is challenging to integrate into a daily routine. So I do feel sympathy for a lot of clinicians that are trying, oh my gosh, here's another thing that I'm meant to do. Yes, it's better if I could get more people working at home. That would be, I think, the ultimate outcome.
Yeah, I don't know if you all heard that or understood it, but the question was
Clinicians slow to uptake the computer system.
Yeah, and Caroline said that one of the barriers is continuity of staff, IT support.
Yeah. It's not really financial.
And yeah, it's not primarily financial.
It's not primarily financial, because both offer really good value for money. So you're, I think, less than €2 an hour of training time. So if you're looking at a long term, 45 minutes for 3 days, it's like 90 quid a year.
Yeah, so 90
so it's
euro a year.
really affordable in the scheme of things.
So the barriers are not financial. The barriers are kind of
generally not
supported infrastructure and understanding and systematic. Yeah, systemic.
Did the NHS use it?
Yes, but in small pockets.
So a similar situation in England and the NHS there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we do often get, we're the first people to use this. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. This person in that trust, maybe, or in that area, but everyone's very keen to be the first at the moment, and then you tell them it's 30 years old and
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop.